this great inheritance and of the duties and heavy responsibilities of sovereignty which have now passed, and my beloved dog. What just happened at Buckingham Palace has stunned the world in a move absolutely no one saw coming. King Charles bypassed traditional succession and declared Catherine Princess of Wales as his official successor. The corridors of power are trembling. The line of succession has been shattered, and behind palace walls fury, betrayal and disbelief oil over. This isn't just a royal announcement, it's a declaration of war. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The announcement came without warning. Early morning chatter turned into panic among royal correspondents when the palace issued a rare emergency summons to the press. And then it happened. Charles, flanked by aides, but without his eldest son by his side, uttered the words that would ripple across every corner of the kingdom. It is with deep consideration and unwavering conviction that I declare Catherine, Princess of Wales, as my chosen successor. There were gasps in the room, confusion, disbelief. Even among the most seasoned royal watchers, none had seen this coming. William, the heir to the throne, was nowhere to be found, not even a pre-recorded video message. Just absence, cold-cutting absence. Within minutes, the world press descended into a frenzy. Newsroom scrambled to interpret the meaning behind the king's words. Was this a symbolic gesture, or had Charles truly rewritten the order of succession? Constitutional experts refused to comment. Former palace staff described the moment as unprecedented and deeply unsettling, and the public shock gave way to speculation. Speculation gave way to division. Behind the walls of the palace, aides were already bracing for impact. According to sources close to the royal inner circle, senior advisors had warned Charles, as for weeks, not to proceed with this plan. They feared backlash not only from the press, but from within the family, from William, from Camilla, from factions that still held tightly to tradition. But Charles was unmoved. Those who know him say this wasn't a spontaneous act, it was the endgame of a long brewing plan. Insiders described the relationship between Charles and William as having slowly corroded over the past year. Disagreements over royal duties, strategy, and vision for the future began to wear thin. The father-son dynamic. Some say the tension reached its peak after a heated exchange during a private family retreat. Others believe it was Catherine's unwavering sense of duty, a rising public favor, and her silent strength during crises that tipped Charles toward this decision. To some, this is Charles asserting the monarchy's survival depends not on birthright, but on capability. To others, it is an unforgivable betrayal of his own blood. Either way, one thing is clear: this is not about the past, it is about reshaping the future of the monarchy and doing it in Charles's image, one that does not include William at the helm. But what pushed Charles to sidestep his own son and place Catherine on the throne? To understand the gravity, we must go behind the gold-plated doors and into a power struggle nobody dared to speak of. Where was Prince William when his father made the most consequential decision of his reign? Silence can speak volumes, and William's absence was deafening as cameras flashed and headlines exploded. The man born to be king was nowhere to be seen, and when he did emerge, his face told a story. The palace refused to explain, while the nation tried to digest the shock of Charles's unprecedented announcement. The absence of William became more than a curiosity, it became a revelation. According to palace insiders, he learned about his father's decision just minutes before the public did. No private conversation, no warning, just a final act delivered with royal precision and a brutal lack of intimacy. Those close to him described the scene in one word: devastation. Not anger, not disbelief, devastation. William had always known the throne was his eventual burden, but he had never anticipated being taken from him, not by scandal, not by his own failure, but by his father. Sources say he locked himself away for hours, unreachable, while aides frantically tried to draft a response. But how do you respond when everything you've been raised to become is suddenly and silently stripped away? Behind the silence, there were months, if not years, of quiet erosion. Tensions between Charles and William had grown beneath the surface of smiling portraits and ceremonial appearances. Disagreements over the future of the monarchy, how to modernize, what roles to eliminate, and who deserved the public's trust had become more than mere gem. Racial differences. Charles wanted to make bold cuts, trim the fat of the monarchy. William, in contrast, reportedly preferred caution, tradition, and slow transition. Neither man blinked, and in the end one of them made the final call. Insiders now suggest that William had already refused certain duties leading up to this moment, pushing back against what he viewed as an overreach of his father's control. The cracks widened when William failed to appear at two major royal events earlier in the year, hence Charles believed were essential to demonstrate unity and stability. What the public didn't see were the words exchanged in private, sharp, cold, and unforgiving. According to one well-placed source, a confrontation between father and son took place just days before the announcement. Voices were raised, ultimatums were drawn. It ended not in resolution, but in a decision Charles would make alone. And when William finally emerged, it wasn't in front of reporters or well-wishers. It was in a closed-door meeting with senior aides. His face, pale and strained, betrayed the composure his role demanded, and when a statement was finally issued, it was vague, short, and pierced with ambiguity. No direct mention of Catherine, no congratulations, no endorsement, just a cryptic line. In times of change, silence can speak loudest. That silence now echoes across the monarchy. But while William withdrew into silence, another royal was quietly preparing for a future she never asked for, but may have been destined to inherit. She never campaigned for it, she never sought it, yet here she is, thrust into a spotlight that's both blinding and brutal. Catherine, poised and graceful as ever, now faces the unimaginable, leading a fractured monarchy during its most uncertain era. But behind the elegance lies turmoil, and the woman now set to wear the crown is not without doubts or enemies. When Charles and Catherine, for a private conversation days before the announcement, she thought it was to discuss William, perhaps a concern about his well-being or the public pressure mounting on the next generation. Instead, she walked out with the weight of a kingdom on her shoulders, and a decision she begged not to be made. Reports from inside the palace confirmed she pleaded with the king to reconsider. She wasn't ready, she didn't want it. And yet, Charles was resolute. The monarchy need you, he reportedly said, not because of who you married, but because of who you are. That moment fractured something inside her. Close friends later revealed that Catherine was overwhelmed, heartbroken, and deeply conflicted. The woman the public had come to admire for her composure, restraint, was now caught in a storm she didn't ask for, and the choice wasn't just about duty, it was about identity, legacy, and sacrifice. How do you accept a crown that comes at the cost of your husband's trust and the quiet life you once imagined? But Catherine's rise wasn't built in the shadows, it had been burned moment by moment, crisis by crisis. From the early days of royal scrutiny, the standing firm during media assaults and family fractures, she never faltered. Her loyalty, silence, and service were not acts of submission, but calculated grace. And Charles saw it. In fact, some insiders believe it wasn't just admiration that drove the king's decision, but an old promise. Before her passing, Queen Elizabeth is said to have shared a quiet admiration for Catherine, calling her the modern spirit of royal dignity. During private audiences, the Queen reportedly he confided in Charles that if the monarchy was to survive the coming decades, it would require not just lineage but leadership. That legacy haunted Charles, and in Catherine he saw both continuity and correction, a chance to restore what had been lost after Diana, a bridge between past pain and future promise. Still, Catherine's conflict is far from resolved. Behind every royal wave is a sleepless night. Behind every speech, a private breakdown. Her life is now no longer her own. Every glance, every silence, every decision will be dissected. She must navigate a treacherous palace filled with envy, tradition, and quiet rebellion, and in choosing duty she sacrifices the one thing she guarded most, peace. Yet Catherine's ascension wasn't just about public image. It was also a calculated move to crush one woman's growing influence in the shadows of the throne. It's a woman many thought had finally secured her legacy. Camilla, queen consort, is sealing what was promised, has been denied. The alliance she built with Charles is unraveling, and palace insiders whisper she's not done fighting. For decades, Camilla fought to be accepted not just by the public but by the institution itself. Through scandal whispers and open contempt she stood by Charles. She endured the sea headlines, the ghost of Diana, and a nation unwilling to forgive. Yet through it all she survived, and in time she prevailed. Her title, her crown, her proximity to power, it was all hard won. But now in a single stroke everything she worked for has been pushed aside, not by an outsider, but by the woman she once dismissed as a commoner with good posture. Sources close to the Queen Consort say she was blindsided by Charles's decision to name Catherine his successor. The idea that the monarchy could bypass William was already a stretch. But to watch Catherine, her longtime rival, crowned in advance, there was betrayal dressed in silk behind closed doors. Camilla was described as livid, not just angry, but humiliated. The announcement wasn't just about the future of the monarchy, it was in her eyes a public statement about her irrelevance. For years Camilla had been quietly building her influence. She had reportedly pushed Charles to begin shaping the next generation, and her image encouraging him to consider public-facing roles for her grandchildren, and to elevate her legacy within the royal apparatus. Events were tailored to give her visibility. Patronages were passed her way. Even her tone in speeches had shifted from support act to power broker. But now all of that has come crashing down. The tension bit too. Camilla and Catherine had long simmered beneath the surface. Court here whispered of cold exchanges during family functions, clipped conversations at state banquets, and a quiet tug-of-war for Charles his heir. Camilla viewed Catherine as too cautious to manufacture. Catherine in turn saw Camilla as politically ruthless, unwilling to let go of power that was never truly hers. Now that Cold War has exploded into open frost since the announcement, palace insiders described dinners gone silent. Traditional allies of Camilla have begun to withdraw, or influence over certain committees has reportedly been curtailed. But she's not retreating. Not even close sources claim she's begun lobbying key courtiers behind the scenes, arguing that Charles' decision threatens stability, even hinting at constitutional challenges. Some say she's aligning with those most unhappy about the succession, those who believe the crown must remain in bloodline, not marriage. Camilla has played the long game before, and she knows how to navigate silence as a weapon. But this time the stakes are higher. This isn't about her title, it's about her place in history, and whether she will be remembered as a queen in her own right, or simply as a placeholder passed over for a future she never saw coming. But as one queen fumes in the shadows, another royal, long underestimated, is stepping into the chaos with a mission of her own. She's always been the money, our key's iron spine hidden in plain sight, while others scramble for attention. Princess and moves like a ghost with purpose, and now insiders say she's chosen a side, and it's not the one anyone expected, as the royal family convulses under the weight of King Charles's decision. One figure has emerged, not with noise but with silent precision. Princess Anne, long known as the hardest working royal, has kept her head low and her actions calculated, but recent whispers from within the palace corridors suggest that Anne wasn't blindsided by the shock succession. She may have helped engineer it. According to sources close to the inner court, Anne met privately with Charles weeks before the official announcement. The conversation was reportedly brief, direct, and heavy with consequence. And ever pragmatic is not a woman swayed by sentiment or spectacle. She has seen monarchs rise and fall, to watch the crown endure scandal, exile, and heartbreak. She understands the weight of history better than anyone, and in Catherine she sees not ambition, but stability. Her respect for the Princess of Wales has grown over years of shared duty. Events quietly endured, patronage is fiercely protected, and public expectations gracefully managed. For and it was clear Catherine didn't crave the crown, but she could carry it. When a leaked report emerged about a late-night meeting between Anne and Catherine at Sandringham just days before the shock announcement, the speculation reached fever pitch. What did they discuss? Why was it kept secret? And why did Anne leave in the early hours without her usual security? No one knows, but what followed was unmistakable. Royal schedules began shifting, engagements were quietly reassigned. Aides once loyal to William's future began answering to, and she wasn't speaking in public, but she was moving pieces on the board. Some say and has privately questioned William's emotional readiness to lead. The weight of grief, responsibility, and disillusionment may have left him, in her view, vulnerable to collapse. She's seen it before. She lived through her brother's darkest years. She knows the signs, and unlike others, she refuses to risk the monarchy's future on hope alone. If Catherine can steady the institution and will protect her with quiet, ruthless efficiency, but perhaps the most shocking revelation lies in unreported confrontations. The one with William, the other with Camilla. Both were said to be tense, sharp, and without pretense. With William, she allegedly urged him to step back before the crown breaks you. With Camilla, it was colder, a warning not to interfere. These weren't family chats, they were orders from the woman who, behind her stoic silence, has always been the monarchy's true enforcer. And loyalty isn't to titles or bloodlines. It's to the institution, to continuity, to legacy. And now her shadow stretches longer than ever before. She's not seeking the spotlight, but she is holding the line. Yet, while Britain watches the Windsor splinter, another pair, exiled, bitter, and watching from afar, is plotting their re-entry into the royal narrative. From Montecito, the reaction was instant and venomous. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, sidelined and scandalized for years, are suddenly relevant again, with the line of succession crumbling. Are they preparing a return or a revenge? The news reached them like an earthquake, disruptive arsenal, and impossible to ignore. Within hours of King Charles, his announcement, a cryptic statement reportedly attributed to Meghan Markle, surfaced in private circles. "This is why we left." It wasn't just a jab, it was a spark, and it reignited a firestorm that had barely begun to cool. The idea that Catherine, once viewed by Meghan as both rival and embodiment of the system that rejected her, was now the future queen, was not just ironic, it was infuriating for Prince Harry. The blow came from a deeper place. According to a source close to the Sussex inner circle, he was shocked and gutted that his own father had chosen to rewrite the rules of succession and didn't even consider him as a viable option. While Harry never publicly voiced interest in the throne, the symbolic weight of being bypassed in favor of his brother's wife reopened wounds he believed had scudded over. Those close to him say it brought back memories of being the spare, the overlooked, the disposable son, now reduced to a footnote in his father's monarchy. As the British media turned its gaze inward, American networks pounced, talk shows speculated, social media erupted, and inevitably Hollywood came knocking. Netflix reportedly approached the Sussexes within 48 hours of the royal announcement, offering to refrain their ongoing contract around a multi-part expose on Catherine's rise. Publishers' 2 cents to blood in the water. Leaks from insiders suggests that Harry may already be drafting a second memoir, one that targets the royal dynamics post-coronation, and focus is not on Meghan's mistreatment, but on Charles's betrayal. The timing couldn't be more combustible. Royal why? Years began speculating whether this latest crisis could become the gateway for Harry and Meghan to re-enter the royal orbit, not his heirs, but as necessary voices in a deeply fractured monarchy. Reports claim private discussions have already begun about offering the couple's ceremonial roles overseas, symbolic gestures to present a picture of unity. But Palisades remains skeptical. Trust once shattered is not so easily rebuilt, and the Sussexes have shown they don't just break silence, they detonated. Old wounds between Meghan and Catherine have resurfaced with brutal speed. Tabloids reignited comparisons, resurfacing every past slight, every cold glance, every rumor of rivalry. And while Catherine remains silent, Meghan's allies have not. Influencers, celebrities, even former royal staff have chimed in, painting a picture of a monarchy more divided than ever, led by a woman who, in Meghan's view, represents everything they fought to escape. Still, beyond the statements in silence, one truth is clear: Harry and Meghan are back in the headlines, and perhaps by design. Whether they seek vengeance or validation, their voices are once again shaping the royal narrative. And in doing so, they remind the crown of one simple truth: silence doesn't mean surrender. But while war brews across oceans and palaces, there's one element the monarchy fears more than any scandal. What the public truly thanks is this: the monarchy's rebirth or its collapse. Across the arc and beyond. Citizens are torn, crowds gather, protests rise, and online forums ignite with debate. Catherine's elevation has become more than a royal decision. It's now a national reckoning. The announcement was intended to bring clarity, unity, and a forward-looking vision, but instead it cracked open a long-buried fault line between generations' values and visions of royalty. Within hours, polls showed a nation divided. Older generations hailed Charles' move as wise and stabilizing. They saw Catherine as the embodiment of dignity, grace, and continuity, but younger voices, as were far less convinced. For them, the announcement felt abrupt, opaque, and disturbingly undemocratic. On social media, hashtags became battlegrounds. Number Not My Queen trended alongside Number Queen Catherine, now turning the internet into a digital coliseum of clashing loyalties. And then came the leak. A confidential palace memo never meant for public eyes found its way into a major newspaper. It contained cautious internal assessments questioning Catherine's psychological readiness for the crown and warning of potential fallout. It wasn't a rejection, but it was far from a vote of confidence. That single leak poured gasoline on the public firestorm, raising questions about transparency, timing, and whether Charles had acted alone or against advice the palace refused to comment.